So I have a setup of the demo, this technical POC. I'm using BusinessWorks, so our integration product, and I'm using Business Studio. And in there, we are going to make a change to our code and then see that that code change basically results in a change of the generated documentation. So for that, we have GitHub where the code lives. We have GitHub Action where the actual MakeDoc tool runs. We have the developer hub that hosts the documentation, and then we have the browser that displays the documentation. So what we will do is we'll open up a BW project in Business Studio. We'll make a change to that BW project and we'll commit that change into GitHub. That commit then results in this GitHub action being triggered and picking up that change and regenerating documentation and putting that back into the repository, which then gets picked up by the developer hub, and you can eventually show that in the browser. So here I quickly show the asset. So you have a BW CE project in Business Studio, with the sources being in GitHub. There you have the documentation that can basically be kept sync, so sync with the actual sources by the MakeDoc tool. And then eventually we get the documentation pages in Developer Hub that are then searchable. So here you see that. So here you have that piece of code where we're going to make a change, and then eventually you will see that change in the Developer Hub. So let me go out of this and actually go into the demo. So here we have the Developer Hub, and inside of the Developer Hub, I have this homepage. On that homepage, I find my components. So I have a component here for the MakeDoc webinar, which I have the current documentation already. So I can open up this activator process, for example. And here I see I just have a log statement at the exception. So here I have the Business Studio, Eclipse. And what is very cool, by the way, is that I can also go directly to the Developer Hub from Business Studio. So I can open up the Developer Hub from Studio. So we've created an integration here. And if I close that, you will also see that you have a Developer Hub section here. But what we will do is I will basically take this log statement and I'll add it onto this exception handling just to show you that I can make a change. So I'll click on properties here and I'll change the name of that property. So I'll just give it change. Okay, so this is now changed. And we just want to keep it consistent. So I'll just get rid of the error by providing an empty message. And then I'll save this. And then you basically see for Git, you have an unstashed change, right? So we basically want to make this change now. So we'll press the plus here and we'll just say made a change. Okay, and I will say commit and push. And what happens now is that we have our GitHub repository here. And if I refresh this, you will now see that there is a change that was made. Now, because of that change, basically the action got triggered. So we have an action here that is made a change that is now running to build the documentation. So this will run for a minute or so. It will regenerate all the documentation, and then we can open up the Developer Hub. So while that is going on, let's have a little look at what we can find in the documentation. So Bobo was showing you earlier the various components that you have in the MakeDoc tool. And basically you see that here. So here you see the cross-reference documentation, the quality assurance documentation, and the analyst documentation. So you can, for example, see the dependency tree for this JDBC connection. So let's say you use a database, then you can see which processes are all using that database. Or you have a process, then you can see the dependency between the process and all of the various schemas that are being used, for example. And you can also see the flow of the data. So how the data flows through the various components of the system. And also a database object. So where is that all being used from? All right, so let's see how it goes with the documentation that is still running. So give that a bit of time. And then it's actually committing that back into the repository. Let's see when that is done. Okay. So that looks almost there now. So let me just go back. So now we are at step number 3. So we have made the change, updated the sources. This is regenerating. And then we should be able to pick up that change. By the way, it's not needed every time to go and look at this GitHub action, but I just want to show you what's happening. So now it's stopping the container. And when that is done, basically this action now has run. So you can also see a summary of the actions that have run. And you see that this made a change basically now is completed. That means that on this side, if we open up the documentation, you will now see a newer version of this documentation is being prepared and will be available shortly. So what this means is basically picked up that there was a change. So it's now regenerating this sort of in the cache of the developer hub. This only needs to happen once, after this documentation has been changed. And then when that is done, we'll basically be able to refresh the screen. So now you see it's done. We can refresh the screen. And now if we go to this process here, you'll now see that this thing that we've changed basically has become part of the screen. Let me just zoom in a bit. So here now you see that that change actually is now part of our documentation. What is also nice, by the way, is that this documentation is now searchable. So we can also search for these things, and you can actually find all of that information in the documentation. So of all of the projects that you have, you can search through all of them. Okay, last but not least, what is also very cool is that basically every time you make a change, there can be a comparison that can be done. So in this case, we can actually see what the change was, right? So if somebody else made a change and you just want to see, okay, I'm not interested in the entire documentation. I'm only interested in the actual change that happened during this commit. You can pick that up from the analyst documentation as well. And this is very cool because then you can basically track the changes and see what a person has changed, for example, when he put a new version of your integration flow into production. All right, so that concludes the demo. Let me just reiterate what we've done. We basically had the code in Business Studio. We made a change to that project that got committed to GitHub, which then got picked up by the makedoc container that regenerated the documentation. And then we had the documentation pages in the developer hub that we looked at with our browser.